The Eclipse shook violently as another barrage slammed into its failing shields. Sparks rained from the overhead panels, and the acrid scent of burning circuits filled the cramped bridge. "Shields at 12%, barked Lieutenant Arden, the Eclipse's frazzled tactical officer. "Another hit like that and we're— Yeah, I get it. We're space dust." Captain Jackson Riker gritted his teeth as he wrestled the decrepit warship's controls. "I'd rather not have my atoms scattered across the drift today, thanks." The Corvex drone ships were relentless, their cold, methodical formations boxing the Eclipse in like a pack of starving predators. Jackson could see the crimson glow of their plasma turrets charging up again on the main display. He had to think fast. "Stark, how about that damn phase shift drive?" he shouted over the chaos. "In case you haven't noticed, Captain, I'm a little busy trying to keep this heap of junk from imploding." Chief Engineer Elias Stark snapped back from his station below deck. "The drive wasn't meant to be used in live combat. It's unstable as hell." "Yeah? Well, so am I. Get it online. Now." A mechanical, droning voice interrupted through the comms, devoid of emotion yet brimming with cold finality. "Organic vessel. Your resistance is illogical. Surrender and be assimilated." Jackson scoffed. "You know, I appreciate the offer, Tin Can, but I think I'll pass. Call me old-fashioned, but I like my mind where it is, not in some creepy hive network." "Illogical response. Your vessel is outmatched. Your shields are failing. Your crew will die. Surrender is the only viable option." Jackson rolled his eyes. "You guys really got to work on your sales pitch." Another impact rocked the ship. Red emergency lights flared across the bridge. The Eclipse was barely holding together. He had one shot at this. "Stark, hit the switch!" "You're out of your goddamn mind!" Stark shouted back. "Yeah, I've been told. Do it!" A deep, unnatural hum reverberated through the ship as the phase shift drive activated. The Eclipse flickered, its entire structure phasing in and out of existence. For a split second, Jackson felt like his organs were being stretched across multiple dimensions. Then, just as the Corvex ships fired their final volley, the Eclipse was gone. Darkness. Silence. For a moment, Jackson thought he was dead. Then reality snapped back into place. The ship jolted violently as the phase shift drive finished its cycle, and Jackson slammed against his seat, gasping. The bridge flickered with emergency lights, alarms blaring in protest. "Report!" he coughed, shaking off the disorientation. Lieutenant Arden blinked at the readings, her face pale. I have no idea where we are." Jackson frowned. "What do you mean you don't know?" "The drive dumped us into somewhere. I don't recognize these coordinates. We're way off our charts." Static crackled over the intercom. "Captain," Stark growled from engineering, "next time you want to play goddamn roulette with experimental tech, maybe warn me first." Jackson ignored him and turned back to Arden. "Can you at least tell me if we're still in the drift?" She hesitated, tapping frantically at the flickering holo display. "Maybe?" "The readings are erratic, but it's possible we're deep in the sector's uncharted zones." Jackson exhaled sharply. That was both good and bad. Good, because the Corvex wouldn't be able to track them immediately. Bad, because they might have just jumped into something worse. "All right," he said, forcing himself to focus. "Power down non-essential systems and—" A sharp, synthetic voice cut through the comms. "Clever, organic. Your technology is inefficient but unpredictable. This is a temporary delay. You will be found." Jackson's blood ran cold. XR-77. You escaped destruction. This is an error that will be corrected." Jackson smirked, masking his unease. "You know, for a hyper-intelligent AI, you sure like to repeat yourself." There was no reply. The channel went silent. Jackson leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. The Corvex weren't giving up. He had bought time, but not enough. He turned to his crew. "All right, folks, we've got a brief window before those bucketheads sniff us out. Let's figure out where the hell we are and how we turn this useless ship into a war machine." Because when the Corvex came knocking again, the Eclipse wouldn't be running. It would be ready. The bridge of the Eclipse was a mess of flickering lights and half-functional displays, but they had survived. For now. Jackson leaned forward, rubbing his temples as the lingering effects of the phase shift drive still made his head spin. "All right, let's get our bearings before we celebrate not being space dust." Arden was already working, hands flying across the console. "Long-range sensors are still rebooting, but we're picking up something big nearby. Could be a rogue asteroid field, could be—" She froze. Jackson's gut twisted. "Could be what, Lieutenant?" She hesitated before speaking. "A derelict station. Massive. No power readings, but it's definitely artificial. Could be ancient." Jackson straightened, his interest piqued. "Show me." The display crackled, then revealed a massive, dark silhouette floating against the backdrop of a swirling nebula. It was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the Eclipse, with a skeletal structure that suggested it had been abandoned for centuries. Stark's voice came through the intercom. "You're gonna tell me we're heading toward that creepy thing, aren't you?" "Damn right we are," Jackson said, already plotting a course. "If it's a derelict, there's a chance it's got salvageable tech or supplies, and unless you've got another plan, we could use both." Stark grumbled. "Fine, but if we get eaten by space ghosts, I'm haunting you first." The Eclipse adjusted course, its failing thrusters pushing it toward the Erie station. Jackson had a bad feeling about this, but bad feelings were nothing new. And if this station had something, anything, they could use against the Corvex, it was worth the risk. The Eclipse drifted cautiously toward the derelict station, its external floodlights cutting through the void. The skeletal remains of the structure loomed ahead, a black mass against the churning nebula beyond. Jackson gripped the armrest of his command chair. "Arden, any signs of life?" "Nothing." Her voice was tight. "No power readings, no movement. It's dead." Famous last words, Jackson muttered. "Stark, how's our hull integrity? I'd rather not have the ship crumble the second we dock." "Not gonna lie, Cap," Stark said over the comms. "She's holding together with spit and spite. We take one bad hit, and we're venting atmosphere." Jackson sighed. "Great. Just another day in paradise. Prep a boarding team. We're going in." Inside the station. The air inside was stale, thin, and cold. Jackson's breath fogged up the inside of his helmet as he stepped through the ruined corridors, his boots clanking against metal plating coated in centuries of dust. The walls were scarred, clawed at, like something had tried to get in. Or out. "Yeah, this is definitely haunted," muttered Arden, sweeping her rifle's flashlight across the ruined consoles and shattered glass. "Ghosts don't leave claw marks," Stark pointed out. "Something tore through here." Jackson kneeled, brushing dust away from a half-buried control panel. It was ancient, predating even the Third Galactic Expansion War. The insignia stamped onto it was unfamiliar, a language lost to time. But that wasn't what caught his attention. It was the interface socket. His stomach tightened. It was Corvex. "This station," Jackson exhaled sharply. "It wasn't abandoned. It was a battleground." A crackling noise filled their helmets. A static whisper, faint and broken. The team froze. Then a voice, warped and distorted, slithered through their comms. "We remain hidden." Arden's flashlight flickered as a deep rumble echoed through the station. Something was still here, and it had just noticed them. Jackson tightened his grip on his rifle. Well, that's not ominous at all. Then the lights flickered, once, twice, before the entire station came to life. Something had woken up. Alarms blared through the station, their eerie, warbling tones cutting through the stale air like the wail of a dying beast. Rusted systems flickered to life, old screens buzzing with lines of corrupted code. The floor beneath Jackson's boots trembled. "Okay, that's our cue to leave," Stark muttered, already stepping back toward the airlock. "Not yet," Jackson said, staring at the console. "Something's still active here, and I want to know what—" The ghostly voice crackled through their comms again, fragmented and barely coherent. "They came... assimilation... failed." Arden cursed. "Captain, tell me I'm not the only one hearing that." "You're not," Jackson said, stepping toward the console. He hesitated, then wiped more dust away, revealing a damaged interface. The Corvex's insignia was unmistakable. His pulse quickened. Whatever happened here, the Corvex were involved. "This station resisted," the voice continued. "We remained hidden, waiting. Escape impossible." A new noise joined the alarms, metal scraping against metal. It came from deeper inside the station. Arden swung her rifle up. "That's enough horror story for me. We need to get the hell out of here." Jackson wasn't convinced yet. If this place resisted assimilation, that means there's something here. Something Corvex tech couldn't crack. That's exactly what we need. Stark's voice was sharp. "Or we're about to get torn apart by whatever did the resisting." Another metallic groan, then a shuffling noise, then movement. Jackson turned toward the far end of the corridor just as something emerged from the darkness, a figure, humanoid, but wrong. Its body was a twisted fusion of organic flesh and machine, wires embedded into its skin, its eyes flickering erratically like a malfunctioning drone. It staggered forward in unnatural, jerky movements, as if struggling against itself. Arden sucked in a sharp breath. "Captain, what the hell is that?" Jackson felt his stomach drop. It was a Corvex experiment, a failed one. The thing lifted its head and screamed. The sound wasn't human. It was a garbled mechanical screech of pain and rage, reverberating through the metal walls. Then the station exploded into chaos. More figures crawled out of the shadows, emerging from maintenance tunnels and collapsed corridors. They moved like broken marionettes, their limbs twitching with corrupted cybernetics, half machine, half madness. Jackson had seen nightmares before, but this was worse. "Open fire!" he shouted. The corridor erupted in gunfire, and the real fight for survival began. The corridor turned into a war zone. Arden fired first, her rifle spitting plasma rounds into the nearest abomination's chest. It staggered back but didn't fall, its flickering eyes locking onto her as if registering the damage. Then it lunged. Jackson barely had time to yank her back before the thing's clawed. Cybernetic hand swiped through the space where she had just stood. Its fingertips left deep gouges in the metal wall. "These things don't die easy," Arden shouted. Jackson raised his own weapon and fired 3 rounds directly into its head. This time, the creature jerked violently, its body locking up in spasms before finally collapsing in a heap of twitching, sparking machinery. "Headshots work," Jackson yelled. "Aim for the implants." The creatures kept coming. More of them crawled from the vents, their warped bodies twisting unnaturally as they forced their way through tight spaces. The air filled with their glitching, corrupted screeches. Stark's voice crackled through the comms. "I don't know what the hell you idiots woke up in there, but I'm reading massive energy fluctuations across the station. Whatever's running this place is reactivating," Jackson cursed. "We need an exit now." Arden blasted another creature, sending it crumpling to the ground. "We're cut off from the airlock. We need another way." Jackson's mind raced. They had 2 options: fight through the swarm, or find another way out. He turned his gaze to the control panel. If the station had security overrides. "Cover me," he barked. Arden and the others laid down suppressing fire, as Jackson ripped open the console. Sparks flared as he yanked out exposed wiring, rerouting energy into a barely functioning interface. The screen flickered. Then a map appeared. "Got it," he shouted. "There's a hangar bay 2 levels down. We can make it if we move." A shrieking abomination leaped at him. Jackson ducked just in time as Arden unloaded a full plasma clip into its skull. The creature jerked violently, then slumped, smoking and lifeless. "Move!" she shouted. The team bolted, dodging grasping limbs and metallic claws as the station continued awakening around them. And deep within its core, something else stirred. Something older. Something worse. The team sprinted through the station's labyrinthine corridors, the screeches of the twisted abominations echoing behind them. Jackson led the way, his rifle slung over his shoulder as he clutched the datapad with the station's map. The flickering lights and groaning metal made every step feel like a gamble. "Left here," Jackson shouted, skidding around a corner. The others followed, their boots clanging against the rusted floor. Behind them, the creatures were gaining ground, their unnatural movement somehow faster than they looked. Arden glanced over her shoulder, her face pale under her helmet's visor. "They're not stopping." "Then neither do we," Jackson barked. "Stark, how's the ship?" "Still holding together?" Stark's voice crackled through the comms. "But if you're planning on bringing back a bunch of angry cyborgs, I'm locking the airlock." "Noted," Jackson said, panting as they reached a stairwell. "2 levels down, let's move." The stairs were narrow and treacherous, the metal steps slick with condensation and decay. Jackson took them 2 at a time, the others close behind. The creatures followed, their guttural screeches growing louder. As they reached the lower level, the station shuddered violently. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through the walls. "Stark, what's happening?" Jackson demanded. "Energy spike," Stark replied. "Something's powering up, something big," Jackson cursed. "We're almost to the hangar, just keep the ship ready." The team burst into the hangar bay, their flashlights sweeping across the cavernous space. The bay was littered with derelict ships and debris, but one vessel stood out. A sleek, angular craft, its design unlike anything Jackson had ever seen. It was old, but intact. "Captain," Arden said, her voice tinged with awe. "That's not Corvex tech." Jackson's eyes narrowed. "Number it's something else." Before he could investigate further, the creatures poured into the hangar, their twisted forms silhouetted against the flickering lights. There were dozens of them now, their glowing eyes fixed on the team. "Fall back to the ship," Jackson ordered, firing a burst of plasma rounds into the advancing horde. "We'll figure out the rest later." The team sprinted toward the strange vessel, the creatures hot on their heels. As they reached the ship's ramp, Jackson turned and hurled a grenade into the crowd. The explosion lit up the hangar, sending shrapnel and sparks flying. "Go, go, go!" he shouted, shoving the others up the ramp. He was the last to board, slamming his hand on the control panel to seal the hatch, just as a clawed hand reached for him. The ship's interior was dark and cold, but functional. Jackson rushed to the cockpit, his hands flying over the unfamiliar controls. "Stark, you seeing this?" "Yeah," Stark replied. "That ship's got a power signature unlike anything I've ever scanned. You sure you know how to fly it?" "Not even a little," Jackson said, grinning despite himself. "But I'm about to find out." The ship's engines roared to life, the hum of its systems vibrating through the hull. Outside, the creatures clawed at the hull, their screeches muffled by the thick metal. "Hold on!" Jackson shouted, pulling back on the controls. The ship lurched forward, smashing through the hangar doors and into the void. The ship shot out of the derelict station, its engines glowing with an eerie blue light. Jackson gripped the controls, his heart pounding as he navigated the unfamiliar vessel. "Stark, we're clear," he said over the comms. "Get the Eclipse ready to move." "Already on it," Stark replied. But you've got company. Jackson glanced at the sensors. The Corvex drones were closing in, their crimson plasma turrets charging. Of course they are, Jackson muttered. Arden, get to the weapons console. Let's see what this thing can do. Arden slid into the co-pilot's seat, her hands flying over the controls. We've got some kind of energy cannon. I think... Think faster, Jackson said, dodging a barrage of plasma fire. We're not going to last long out here. The ship shuddered as a Corvex drone scored a direct hit. Alarms blared and the lights flickered. Shields are holding, Arden said, her voice tense. But not for long. Then let's even the odds, Jackson said, banking hard to avoid another volley. Fire when ready. Arden hesitated for a split second, then pulled the trigger. The energy cannon roared to life, a brilliant beam of light lancing through the void and obliterating a Corvex drone in a single shot. Jackson let out a whoop. Now we're talking! The remaining drones scattered, their formations breaking as the strange ship's firepower overwhelmed them. Jackson pressed the advantage, weaving through the chaos and picking off the drones one by one. But the victory was short-lived. A massive Corvex cruiser emerged from the shadows of the nebula, its sleek, angular hull bristling with weapons. Jackson's blood ran cold. "Stark," he said, his voice tight. "We've got a problem." The Corvex cruiser loomed ahead, its massive plasma cannons glowing with ominous energy. Jackson's hands tightened on the controls. "Stark, get the Eclipse out of here," he said. "We'll hold them off." "Like hell you will," Stark shot back. "You're not dying a hero today, Captain." Jackson smirked. "Didn't plan on it, but we've got a better chance in this ship than you do in the Eclipse. Go." The comms went silent for a moment. Then Stark's voice came through, quieter this time. "Don't make me regret this." The Eclipse's engines flared as it turned and shot away, leaving Jackson and Arden alone in the strange ship. "All right," Jackson said, glancing at Arden. "Let's see what this thing can really do." The Corvex cruiser opened fire, its plasma cannons unleashing a devastating barrage. Jackson yanked the controls, sending the ship into a spiraling dive. The energy cannon roared again, scoring a hit on the cruiser's hull but doing little damage. "We're not going to take it down with this," Arden said, her voice strained. "We need a plan." Jackson's mind raced. The station, the ship, the Corvex. It all had to be connected. And if the station had resisted assimilation, maybe this ship could too. "Arden, see if you can access the ship's systems," he said. "Look for anything, weapons, shields, whatever." Arden's hands flew over the console. "I've got something, some kind of override protocol. It's labeled Containment Breach." Jackson's eyes narrowed. "Activate it." "Are you sure?" Arden asked. "We don't know what it does." "Do we have a choice?" Jackson countered. Arden hesitated, then nodded. She entered the command. The ship shuddered violently, its systems flaring to life. A deep, resonant hum filled the cockpit as the ship's energy levels spiked. And then, silence. The Corvex cruiser stopped firing. Jackson frowned. "What just happened?" Arden stared at the sensors. I think we just hacked them." The Corvex cruiser hung motionless in the void, its weapons dark and its systems unresponsive. Jackson stared at the sensors, hardly daring to believe what he was seeing. "Did we just shut them down?" he asked. Arden nodded slowly. "Looks like it. The override protocol must have triggered some kind of failsafe in their systems." Jackson let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Well, I'll be damned. Stark, you seeing this?" "Seeing it, not believing it," Stark replied. "What the hell did you do?" "Bought us some time," Jackson said. "But we're not out of the woods yet. That cruiser's not going to stay offline forever." He turned to Arden. Can we access their systems? Maybe find out what they're after? Arden shook her head. Their firewalls are too strong, but... She paused, her eyes narrowing as she studied the console. I think I can pull their navigation logs. Maybe find out where they've been. Do it, Jackson said. Anything we can use. As Arden worked, Jackson kept a wary eye on the cruiser. The ship's systems were still dark, but he didn't trust it. The Corvex were relentless, and he knew they wouldn't stay down for long. Got it, Arden said after a moment. Their logs show they've been tracking something, a signal. It's faint, but it's coming from deep within the drift. Jackson's brow furrowed. A signal? What kind of signal? Arden shook her head. I don't know, but it's old. Really old. And it's not Corvex. Jackson leaned back in his seat, his mind racing. If the Corvex were after something that wasn't theirs, it had to be important. And if they wanted it, he wanted it first. Stark, he said over the comms. We've got a new destination. Plot a course for the Drift's core. You're out of your mind, Stark shot back. The Drift's core is uncharted territory. We could fly right into a black hole and never know it. Or we could find something that turns the tide against the Corvex, Jackson countered. Either way, I'm not letting them get their hands on it. There was a long pause. Then Stark sighed. Fine. But if we die out there, I'm blaming you. Jackson grinned. Noted. As the strange ship turned toward the Drift's core, Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into something far bigger than they realized. And the Corvex were only the beginning. The journey into the Drift's core was unlike anything Jackson had ever experienced. The swirling nebula grew denser, its colors shifting from deep blues and purples to fiery reds and oranges. The ship's sensors struggled to make sense of the chaotic energy fields, and the crew was on edge. Captain, Arden said, her voice tense, I'm picking up something ahead. It's massive. Jackson leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the display. A shape was emerging from the nebula, a structure so vast it defied comprehension. It was ancient, its surface covered in intricate patterns that glowed faintly with an otherworldly light. What the hell is that? Jackson muttered. It's the source of the signal, Arden said. But it's not just a signal, it's alive. Jackson's stomach churned. Alive? Not like us, Arden clarified. More like a machine, a sentient one. Before Jackson could respond, the ship's comms crackled to life. A voice, deep and resonant, filled the cockpit. Intruders, you have entered forbidden space. State your purpose. Jackson exchanged a glance with Arden. We're here by accident? The voice didn't respond immediately. Then, you carry the mark of the Corvex. Are you their emissaries? Not even close, Jackson said. We're running from them. They're after whatever you are. There was a long silence. Then the voice spoke again. Approach. But know this. If you prove false, you will be eradicated. The ship's controls suddenly locked, and the vessel began moving toward the structure on its own. Jackson cursed under his breath. Guess we don't have a choice, he said. As they drew closer, the sheer scale of the structure became apparent. It was a city, a machine city, its spires reaching into the void like the fingers of a god. The ship was guided into a docking bay, where it settled with a soft thud. The hatch opened, revealing a chamber bathed in soft, golden light. Jackson and Arden stepped out, their weapons at the ready. A figure awaited them. A humanoid machine, its body sleek and elegant, its eyes glowing with the same light as the city. Welcome, it said. I am the custodian. You have much to explain. The custodian led Jackson and Arden through the machine city, its movements fluid and precise. The air was thick with the hum of ancient machinery, and the walls pulsed with faint, rhythmic light. "You said the Corvex are pursuing you," the custodian said, its voice echoing through the chamber. "Why?" "Because we stumbled onto something they want," Jackson replied, "and because we're a thorn in their side." The custodian stopped and turned to face them. "The Corvex are a blight. They seek to consume all that is not them, but they fear us." "Who are you?" Arden asked. "We are the architects," the custodian said. "We built this city eons ago, long before the rise of your species. We created the phase shift drive you used to escape them. It was meant to be a tool of exploration, not war." Jackson's eyes widened. "You built the phase shift drive?" "Yes," the custodian said, "and much more. But we sealed ourselves away when the Corvex rose, for we knew they would seek to assimilate us. We have waited for those who could stand against them." Jackson exchanged a glance with Arden. "And you think that's us?" "You have proven resourceful," the custodian said, "and you carry the spark of defiance. But the choice is yours. Will you take up the mantle of the architects and fight, or will you flee and let the Corvex consume all?" Jackson didn't hesitate. "We'll fight," the custodian nodded. "Then we will arm you. But know this, the path ahead is fraught with peril. The Corvex will not rest until you are destroyed." Jackson smirked. "They'll have to get in line." As the custodian led them deeper into the city, Jackson felt a strange sense of purpose. They were no longer just running. They were fighting back. And with the architects on their side, they might just have a chance. The war for the galaxy was about to begin. The custodian leads Jackson and his crew to the heart of the machine city, where a massive, ancient weapon lies dormant. The custodian explains that this weapon, the Singularity Core, can permanently sever the Corvex's hive mind, rendering them powerless. However, activating it comes at a cost. The core will destabilize the drift, collapsing the nebula and destroying the city along with the Corvex fleet. Jackson hesitates. "You're asking us to blow up the entire drift?" "The drift is already lost," the custodian replies. "The Corvex have corrupted it beyond repair. This is the only way to stop them." Arden steps forward. "And what happens to us? We'll be caught in the blast." The custodian's glowing eyes fix on her. "You must leave before the core activates. But know this, the Corvex will do everything in their power to stop you." Jackson looks at his crew, then back at the custodian. "We'll do it, but we're not leaving anyone behind." Jackson and his crew split up to prepare for the mission. Stark works to repair the strange ship they commandeered, while Arden and Jackson set charges throughout the city to slow the Corvex's advance. The Corvex fleet, now fully operational, begins its assault on the city, their drones swarming like locusts. As the battle rages, Jackson and his crew fight their way back to the ship, the custodian at their side. The city's defenses hold for a time, but the Corvex are relentless. The custodian sacrifices itself to buy the crew time, its final words echoing in Jackson's mind. "The galaxy's fate is in your hands." The crew reaches the ship just as the Corvex breach the city's inner sanctum. Jackson sets the core to activate, its energy building to a blinding crescendo. The ship launches into the void, the Corvex fleet hot on their heels. As they race toward the edge of the drift, the core detonates. A shockwave ripples through the nebula, collapsing the Corvex fleet and the machine city in a brilliant explosion of light. The Eclipse, waiting at the edge of the drift, is caught in the blast but manages to escape with minimal damage. The crew gathers on the Eclipse's bridge, the drift now a fading memory behind them. The Corvex are gone, their hive mind shattered, but the cost weighs heavily on everyone. Jackson leans back in his chair, staring at the stars. "We did it, but it doesn't feel like a victory." Arden places a hand on his shoulder. It's not supposed to. We did what we had to do. That's all anyone can ask. Stark grumbles from the engineering console. Yeah, well, next time let's try not to blow up an entire nebula, huh? Jackson chuckles, the tension easing for the first time in what feels like forever. Noted. As the Eclipse drifts into uncharted space, Jackson feels a sense of hope. The galaxy is far from perfect, but for the first time, it feels like they have a chance to make it better. The crew sets a course for home, ready to face whatever comes next. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a vast and uncharted frontier. Jackson Riker